news, Prince Charles is 71, so that when he got the coronavirus, I thought, oh dear, he's right in that vulnerable demographic. But most people in Italy who have died have had other illnesses, making them weaker. And Charles has bounced back pretty well. He's recorded this message now.
He had recently gone through the process of contracting this coronavirus, luckily with relatively mild symptoms. And I find myself on the other side of the illness, but still in no less a state of social distance and general isolation. At such an unprecedented and anxious time in all our lives, my wife and I are thinking particularly of all those who have lost their loved ones in such very difficult and abnormal circumstances, and of those having to endure sickness, isolation and loneliness.
Now, Kristy, the Prime Minister's made clear that he wants these restrictions to last probably 6 months. Does it worry you whether many Australians can handle all that isolation and loneliness for that long, the loneliness that Prince Charles was talking about?
Well, first of all, I commend Prince Charles for making such a public statement, because there are so many people in Britain who love the monarchy. There are so many people in Australia and Canada and all around the world, younger people and particularly older people who sometimes take the attitude, well, I lived through the war and, you know, we all managed along then and, you know, it's fine, because they've gone through hard times before. So a lot of people look to him and they thought, gosh, you know, if it can happen to him and he was struggling with it and wants to remind us all that it's really serious, I think that's a fantastic thing that he has done, because you don't often see him open up making statements that make any great sense. However, I think that there are a lot of people struggling. I myself live alone. It's really isolating, particularly if you're in small apartments. My family is in Western Australia, where Gemma is. I'm a patriarch. You know, patriot of Western Australia. But it's really, really difficult when you are isolated and alone. So mental health is going to be a huge issue as this goes on and on and on, and people are worried about the mental health of small business owners as well, but I think they should be worried about the mental health of people in their community, single people.
Kristy, when you say that, when you say, you're so right, but when you say that, I'm thinking, gosh, I've got to invite Kristy over to my place. You know, I feel so sorry for you. I'm actually banned from doing that because I've got two people, at least two people at home. We've got three actually, and I'm not allowed to invite you over. I mean, it's a ban like that that I think is actually going too far, and it's just, you know, the cure can't be allowed to be worse than what we're trying to tackle. But the thing, you raised something there, Gemma. Prince Charles, you know, Kristy's just said, great to see him talk, and it was great to see him talk. The Dutch King gave an even better address. Where's the Queen? Why hasn't she said something?
Well, I hope she's being protected. I hope she's in isolation. I don't know. I think the relevance of Prince Charles speaking is because he's the one who had the diagnosis. You know, he's the one saying I was infected and I was unwell and now I'm still isolating. I think that's where the relevance comes from his address. But to your earlier point, I absolutely agree that some of these things are an overreach, and you know, there's only so much hanging out with my dog that I can do before I go a little bit stir crazy. Like Kristy, I live on my own, and you know, just little things that you don't consider. I didn't think that losing my exercise routine. We know how important exercise is for mental health. I can't go to kickboxing anymore. I can't go to the gym. I've had to, you know, and they're first world problems in many ways, but if you're talking about a person's mental health and their ability to then go to work and deal with the stress of running a business, which I do and Kristy does, those little things for me last week became a really, really big thing that I didn't anticipate, and I really struggled last week. There are so many of us in that boat, and I really hope and pray that it isn't the 6 months that is being spoken about right now. I'm hopeful, and I have faith that it won't be. But in the meantime, this conversation and being able to say to one another, I'm really not doing okay, is so important. It's so important.
I've got that, but again, you know, I think that's one of the restrictions we cannot possibly have hanging around for 6 months.
No, and I don't believe it will.
You to our home to, just to keep human contact going. Kristy, we've got 8 cruise ships off our eastern coast that most of them, almost all, won't leave and can't land, aren't allowed to land. Probably about 20 cruise ships all around the Australian coast. The government's at least started to fly doctors to some of them to bring off people who are sick, not necessarily the virus, of course. Are we being too hard? I mean, why can't they land not like the Ruby Princess and, spread out in the community, take a flight interstate, but, straight into quarantine like we do with planes? I mean, it seems to me this is an overreaction from governments that have absolutely ballsed up the Ruby Princess.
I think it is. It's one of those things where no government wants to be responsible for letting people off a cruise ship that could infect members of the community. These ships carry about 3,000 passengers each. They're run by a crew of about 1,100 people. That crew is desperate to get home on each of those ships. I know the unions have said this is a human rights issue now and a workplace safety issue. Premier McGowan over in Western Australia, of course, there's a German cruise ship off the coast of Perth, has done the unthinkable for a Labor leader and uttered the C word, Andrew, Christmas Island.
Fine. What's wrong? No, I'm happy with that. That's fine.
And has said that is
Labor,
a place, to go and quarantine people from these cruise ships, give them the best healthcare, make sure that they are safe, and then they can make their own arrangements home, or the government can assist them to make their arrangements home.
Agreed.